Connecting. Selamat pagi para partisipan. Terima kasih telah hadir di seminar Academic Writing Center Balai Bahasa dan Budaya Universitas Negeri Malang. Kita akan menunggu beberapa saat lagi hingga beberapa peserta hadir. Kemudian kita akan mulai seminar kita hari ini. Terima kasih. Sekali lagi terima kasih Bapak dan Ibu, teman-teman semuanya yang sudah hadir dalam seminar kita pagi ini. Kita akan menunggu hingga sekitar 3 atau 4 menit untuk menunggu beberapa partisipan yang masih berusaha masuk ke ruang Zoom kita. Mengucapkan selamat pagi pada Ibu Ririn. Terima kasih telah hadir, Ibu Lydia.
Sama-sama, Bu Lisnita. Maaf, saya on cam dulu ya.
Silakan Ibu, terima kasih. Okay. I think we can start now. We can say hello to all of our participants this morning. And then we can probably start the formal presentation 5 minutes after. Everybody, good morning. We are a team from Academic Writing Center Balai Bahasa and Budaya Universitas Negeri Malang. Welcome you all to our seminar this morning. Our seminar this morning will be discussing the step-by-step writing process. We understand that we, as a students here at the university, have the similar necessity to write academic writing or to produce academic writing in various forms, in many types of different purposes. Some of you might need to write your proposal for applying to universities overseas. Some of you might be trying to finish your skripsi or a thesis or dissertasi for your studies at Universitas Negeri Malang. because I can see some of my Scripsy students in this Zoom room, which is good. So we also understand that writing for a lot of people, for us as well, is a very challenging activity, and to some extent, it relies on our mood as well, how we regulate our emotional dynamics to get ourselves motivated into starting our writing. In our seminar this morning, Andrea will share with us, everyone, how we can structure our steps in writing more effectively for a better result. Everybody, we have with us this morning, Ibu Andrea Mason Garner, who will be our speaker at the seminar today about the step-by-step writing process for academic writing. Andrea?
Great. So good morning. I'm honored to be here this morning with all of you and just have this opportunity to talk about academic writing and the writing process, because as Ibu Usnita just shared, it's not easy. And so we're just going to exchange some ideas. I'm going to go ahead and present some material, and will leave plenty of time after the presentation for Q&A. But I encourage you, if you do have questions as I'm speaking, go ahead and put them in the chat box before you forget, and we will collect those questions and address those at the end as well. Okay, so you have two ways of expressing your questions, through the chat box or in the Q&A at the end of the slides. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And there we are. All right, it looks like we're set. So I've been working with the Academic Writing Center team from UM, wow, 7-8 months or so. And so together we have created a writing center. We offer various services, including like one-on-one consultations and workshops like this. Well, today is a seminar, but we also do workshops. So just want to make sure that you know that we're available to help you become a better writer. So I want to make sure that we're clear about the objectives, and I'm going to be talking about the writing process using the research article genre. So maybe that's not what you're working on right now, maybe it's slightly different, but the concept should apply in general, and I think you'll find them useful. So I'm going to talk about the writing process, but also the editing process, because that's just as important to polish our writing, right, and make it as clean as possible. And then I'll also share some resources that I think are valuable and can provide you more in-depth information than we can share in the short time that we have here. So let's go. I'm going to walk us through the preparation to write. So there's a lot that goes on before we even begin to write. And then once we've done some preliminary work and we have, if we're doing research, we've completed our research, then we can start to write our first draft. And that's a major accomplishment, to finish our first draft. And then after a period of time, we're ready to edit and revise and create draft number 2. And that's where I'll stop the step-by-step today, is when we've created draft number 2. And like I said, well, I'll touch on some resources and also show you an example of where you can find a research paper that will sort of illustrate the aspects that I'm talking about today. And of course, we'll finish with Q&A. So here we go, we're off. We're going to start preparing to write. But first, what are we going to write about? Okay, so we have to make sure we've identified a topic. So I'm going to spend a few minutes on kind of best practices for identifying a topic. And in that process, we complete what I call a preliminary literature review. And potentially, if you're writing an article for publication, this is the best time to identify that journal. So, what kind of topic should you write about, right? So it's best just to kind of keep an open mind and start with some broad ideas that you can then narrow as you learn more. At this point, you're just skimming the literature. You're not really reading it in depth. You're flipping through various journals and articles, gathering ideas, trying to become clear on what you want to do. And then that's when you've identified some potential research topics. But before you can go further, you need to evaluate those topic ideas. I just want to point out here too that depending on who or what you're writing for, there may be some topic restrictions, limitations, suggestions. So make sure that you're in compliance with maybe whoever you're writing for, or perhaps they suggested that you use a preferred methodology. And if that's the case, then that could adjust your topic perhaps, but just a couple of things to keep in mind. All right, so we've done this preliminary work, and now we're at a level where we have these potential topic ideas, but we want to narrow them down to about 3 or 5 at this point. And try to stay open, try not to go too far ahead, because it's just good to stay open-minded and neutral and not get too tangled with a particular topic, because for one reason or another it may not work. But I also suggest that you think about a topic that really makes you excited, because that's the ideal partnership, to be able to research and write about something that you can get excited about. So now at this point, you're going to do a little bit more reading of your literature, but it's still limited. You're going to skim the title, the abstract, and the intro. And what you're doing here is trying to drill down a little farther with your topics to identify what's been done, maybe what other authors have approached. And so you're getting more informed in order to identify a topic. And at this point, when you're talking about reviewing the literature, you're really looking for, now you're starting to take a deeper dive in the literature, and you're really trying to understand what's the current, what I call the state of knowledge, like what's the current state of the research. What have other researchers done? What haven't they done? Why haven't they done that? So all of these things can help you find a gap that you can address in your research. So at this point, you're probably going to go a little further and look at the conclusions. And why? Because in the conclusions, scholars, authors often address needs, further research needed. They might even use that terminology, so it's kind of easy to find something that might need further research. But they'll also usually address limitations. It could be in the discussion period or section, it could be in the conclusion, but look for those limitations, because that's also a potential gap that you could fill in your topic, your research topic. And let's see, let's say now that you have those 2 or 3 top topics and you're really comfortable with those 3 topics, but you're really not sure which one you should move forward with, okay? So I really encourage you to think about how original is your topic, your plan. Is it something that's important? And the availability of literature, it means, is there enough research already to help shape your research? Because you don't want to potentially enter an area where there just hasn't been enough research yet to support your work. But you also want to be careful not to enter an area where there's an overabundance of literature and potentially very little gap. So try to find that balance. And regarding data access, think about how are you going to accumulate your data? How are you going to have access to the people or to the information that you need? So you really need to think about the practicality of gathering your data. And the analysis method, again, is around practicality. Do you have the knowledge or the skill to perform the analysis that you might need to conduct research on this topic? And like I mentioned before, the overall personal interest, your enthusiasm, your passion for the particular subject. So what I like to do here when I have, or my students have, a couple of topics, is I ask them to create an elevator pitch. And I don't know if this is something that you're familiar with, but an elevator usually takes 1 to 2 minutes to get from one floor to another, right? Something like that, depends on how tall the building is. But let's just assume that you step into an elevator with a scholar in your field, and you have 1 to 2 minutes to convey your research topic to him or her and gain their support. So in those 1 or 2 minutes, you're gonna answer the questions like what is it? Why is it important? Why is it original? And how are you going to accomplish it? So really think about how you could pitch your topic to someone in the field. And once you've done that, practice with your colleagues and see which topic they can get excited about. Okay, that's a good sort of barometer or measure of maybe what topic you should move forward with. All right, so that's all about the topic. So now you've got a topic, right? So we're getting closer to writing, but what's next? Well, we have the literature review that we all love dearly, right? And here we are drafting the literature review. So we're going to go deep into the literature. We're going to do our best at drafting the various pieces, knowing that we're going to circle back to the literature review when our research is complete, because things will change. We might find other studies that we want to integrate into the lit review. We want to make sure the lit review is well connected to the discussion. So that's why it's a draft at this point, but it's a very necessary draft. So I'm not going to be talking about all the sections of the research paper this morning, because it's really more like step by step about writing. But because the literature review is such a significant piece of what we do and is like the whole foundation of our papers, it's important to just review the key elements. So the literature review, the job, right, is it's placing your study within the context of existing research. So you're providing that background information about what's been done. Maybe you're putting together your arguments and reasoning about how your potential study integrates with past studies. And of course, you're coming to a close at the end of your literature review with a very clear explanation of what the research gap is and the questions that support that gap. So making sure, of course, that in this literature review, you've addressed the significance and the originality of your topic. So that's very big picture about the literature review. And we have lots of other, we've done several workshops on lit reviews, and we have lots of example material if you're interested in more information. And then we have some tips, right? Writing tips, because remember, you're writing your draft review at this point. And this is where you get to shine and show your academic writing skills, the ones that where you summarize, where you synthesize the various articles that you have found to support your research. You're adding your own voice through analysis and interpretation. And you're also critically evaluating what are the strengths and the weaknesses of the sources that you've used. And of course, you're using concise, well-structured writing. Now, you don't just use those skills in the lit review, but they predominantly are evident in the lit review. But you'll be using similar skills in your discussion as well. All right, so we've identified a topic, you've drafted your lit review. Now, this is a good time to just think about what journal, if you're interested in publishing. Now, there's more on the slide that you need because I borrowed it from another presentation I gave. But if you're interested in choosing a journal, I highlighted the aspects in green that would be applicable at this point, where you're looking for potential journals, then you're reviewing them, and then you're ranking them, basically. And the factors, as you can see on the right, depend on what your overall goal is. And I know that not all the participants today are interested in publishing, but if you are, please take some time and kind of savor this, because it's important as you move forward in your publication process. All right. So now we've identified our topic, we've drafted our lit review, and if we're publishing, we have a pretty good idea of the top 3 journals that we would like to be published in for this particular topic. So now you're ready to conduct your research based on how you've proposed to the methodology that you've already determined earlier in this process. So you're going to collect your data and analyze your data. So once you've had that, you're ready to move forward. And that's what I call ready to write draft 1. And I like this particular graphic because it is messy. Writing is messy. It's a series of revision, of iteration. It's something that's really never done. Sometimes we just say, oh, that's good. But to be a good writer takes a lot of patience and embracing the mess. So don't be scared of the mess. So when we're ready to write, I know some of us can get a bit stressed when it's time to sit down and write. I say, just write, okay? Just write whatever comes out. You're going to clean it up. It's going to be revised. Don't worry. But write, and I'm going to give you some ideas of how to just write. But once you've started draft 1, I really encourage you to show up every day at your desk or wherever and write. Because if you start and stop, it's very, very hard to gain momentum and feel a connection with your paper. So even if it's, a short period of time, because we're all busy, just show up every day and make progress on that draft. And my last tip there is, remember, this is a draft, and the important part is to get the information on the paper in the right format. It's not that important at this point that you correct and revise as you go. In fact, that's actually a stalling mechanism for writing, to like want to go back and clean it up as soon as you've written it. Just let it go. You'll have plenty of time to come back. All right, I suggest when you're ready to write your first draft that you have an outline, or you create an outline for every section. So depending on what the genre is of your paper, if it's a research article, you would have an outline of your intro, you've done your lit review, or perhaps your intro and lit review are one section, but perhaps you haven't actually addressed the introduction material yet. So background, outline, and then outline for your methods section, your data analysis, and so forth, discussion. And this is an outline. It's just a way for you to kind of plan ahead. It can be changed, but it's like a plan. And remember, we're much more successful when we have a plan, whatever that plan might look like. And plans change, but we have to have a plan. All right. Step 2, start writing the methods section. So really it's start with writing the methods section, because why? Because the methods section is known to be the easiest section to write, okay? It's like a recipe, it's a cookbook. And there's almost a set formula for writing the methods section. And following that format is somewhat, it's rewarding, because you've got a section done right away. The methods section is something actually that could be done in your first session, or maybe your second session of writing. It's really satisfying to get a section done quickly. So start with your methods section. All right, now the next 3 sections are not so easy and quick. So you have your methods, you've done your data analysis, so now it's time to present your results. So there's a lot of models for presenting the results. And then of course you move into the discussion. What do the results really mean? What do they contribute to the field? What is the significance of your results? And then of course you can draft a conclusion. So this stage could take a bit of time. All right, I know it looks easy. It's one slide, just do 3 sections and you're done. No, I know it's not that easy, but that's the order I encourage you to write your paper in. So now you've got most of your paper drafted, right? But remember, I told you to circle back to your introduction lit review after your results, discussion, and conclusion are complete, to make sure that they are in sync with one another, and that you've done a good job of linking your literature review to your discussion and vice versa. That's really important. And I really think you should be doing that in draft 1, because you want your draft to be as complete as possible. Yes, it may need work, but at least it will be your best first attempt. So once you've done this, you're welcome to write your abstract, which is actually kind of fun after you've had all of that lengthy writing to do, and finalize your title. I say finalize because we often use a working title while we're working on our paper. A working title just means it's a title that it might work, but it might not, depending on exactly how our paper turns out. And we also might come up with a better idea. So that's what the finalized title means. It's final as of draft 1. It can change again, of course, but just make sure that you've checked back and that your title is reflective of the paper that you've just written. All right, we're almost to the end of draft 1. We're at step 6. Now you can do some editing, but really minimal, okay? This is not like slashing paragraphs and making huge changes. This is more about reading through your paper, and I suggest reading it aloud and catching anything that is confusing or that really is difficult to even focus on. So make sure you don't have any of those obstacles in draft 1. And then as you read it, you're probably going to notice places where maybe your support or your arguments are weak or a little disconnected, just improvement opportunities. Let's just call them that. Just make notes, okay, about those. Don't try to resolve those now in draft 1. Just make notes. And because draft 1 is just the starting point. So you have now finished draft 1. And actually you could begin draft 2, but I really suggest that you make sure that you allow time in between draft 1 and draft 2 to just sit back, distract yourself from writing, recharge your brain, find your enthusiasm again for your topic and your paper. Because if you are crunched for time and have to speed through this process, it's not fun, and you're not engaged. Perhaps it becomes more of a stress test, and that's not the purpose. So make sure that in your writing process, you allow time for stepping away from writing. All right. Draft 2, though, is really about the slide. Revise, edit, repeat, right? Revise, edit, repeat. I call it draft 2. I mean, it could be called multiple drafts, but here we're actually getting much more specific about what we've written. And we're not sharing our paper yet, remember. We're going to do this editing ourselves at this point. So there's 2 stages of editing that I suggest that you do in draft 2. So there's stage 1, which I call overall editing. And this is really just looking at it as an English language. I'm talking about English language, but doesn't necessarily mean to be in English, right? We write in different languages, but whatever language it is the structure, is it conducive to a nice flow and logic? Is it cohesive? Have you avoided repeating some ideas over and over or using the same phrase? Sometimes when I read a paper that's used the same phrase, I just find myself looking for that again and again, and I forget what the author's even written. I'm just looking to see how many times they use the same phrase. So make sure that you're using variety in your language. So that's the structure, the paragraphs, making sure that you have just one main topic, right, in each paragraph. Check your work. Make sure that the paragraphs flow ideally from new to old to new information, okay? Your sentences, I mean here that you avoid the run-on lengthy sentences, and you also add a variety of sentences in your writing. Use some short sentences sometimes, use longer ones, use various connectors. So again, to make it interesting. We always want to avoid plagiarism in our papers, and if there's any concern about if you've plagiarized, there's lots of resources to help, and we can help with that as well. Language use is using the appropriate level of language for the material that you're presenting. So we're talking about academic writing, and so that means your vocabulary should be academic vocabulary. And so, for example, I'll read a paper and I can't remember, I don't have an exact sentence in mind, but there might be, the author might have said, there were some instances that the student so the word some, S-O-M-E, I encourage people to avoid that because it's vague. It's not very specific. And so it's not a bad word, of course, but it's just too general and it sort of dilutes your message. And so just try to use specific and academic language. Then, and I'm going to show you a tool that will help you with this stage 1 overall editing that the Writing Center has put together. And I think actually the participants have received this. Is that correct, team? Have they received this, their client checklist? Okay, we'll still look at it together just in case you haven't had a chance to look at it yet. Then we have the stage 2 editing, and this is much more comprehensive because this is the whole content of what you've written. You know, have you fully addressed your topic? And this is examined through the use of your title and every section that I've listed there. And so I'm going to stop sharing for a minute and we'll go to, I'm going to bring up the client checklist that will help us examine what I'm talking about. And back to Zoom. Okay, so let me go to the beginning here. And if you have yours, you can follow along or just look here. And I'm not going to walk you through the entire document, but I really want to point out the significance of this research, or this resource, excuse me, as you complete your second draft. So here's stage 1 that I just showed you in my slide, right? The structure, the paragraphs, so forth. And then here's stage 2. So that's just a cover sheet. Stage 1 tips are right here. So if you were looking at your structure, here are some questions that you could ask yourself. And just be really honest. Yes, no, maybe, right, or not sure. That's okay. Sometimes we don't know. And but this is a self-assessment at this point. All right. So use these questions to help guide your writing. And so that there's just one page for editing my work for stage 1. So it's not overwhelming. But when we get into stage 2, where there's a checklist to support each section, so each section has 1 page. And like title doesn't have a large number of questions, but they're very important, right? As far as helping you develop a title that is appropriate, that's going to catch the reader's eye, and be very clear. So please take time to read through any section that I would use this, and I do use this, especially when I'm reviewing other people's research papers, because it helps me remember what I want to focus on as I'm reading and offering advice. So that is the client research, the research article client checklist, something like that, and a product of the Writing Center. And you can let us know if you have any questions with this. I'm going to go back to my slides for a moment. And here we are. Oops, but I forgot to share. Oops, just a moment. Hang on. Ah,
Anything we can help, Andrea?
I left the meeting accidentally.
Okay,
But I'm back.
of course.
Sorry.
All good.
And from current slide, there we go. All right, so this was my reminder to show the checklist, which we just did. And now I suggest after you have finished a solid draft number 2 and you've gone through your self-editing, that you're ready to share your document and seek feedback. And many of us have maybe colleagues or friends or trusted loved ones that will read our paper and give us honest feedback. But I also want you to realize that that's a service that we can provide at the Academic Writing Center as well. And we serve as critical readers of drafts, of papers, whatever, and provide guidance. That it's like a collaboration between you and one of the tutors. And so that's an active service that we provide. All right. So resources. I'm not going to go through these. You'll have these slides. You can look at them if you're interested or it's appropriate for work you're working on. These are some resources for helping you in your topic ID and development. Finding a journal, if that's a place that you're at in your academic path. And resources for writing your literature review. Okay, so those are specific resources. These resources, though, are more general and more applicable to all types of writing, especially research writing. But it's like starting your research. I really advocate that Purdue OWL, they have a wide variety of resources for different types of paper, not just research articles. You may be aware of the phrase bank, Manchester Phrase Bank, which is very popular and well used. Please consult it, get familiar with it to polish your writing. I've included a link to an academic word list just to kind of give you a feel for what I mean by academic language, if that's not as familiar to you. In yellow, I have a sample paper, and I'm going to let you go ahead and look at that on your own. As far as just for time, I want to make sure we save enough time for Q&A, but it's very straightforward and very clear as the especially if you are fairly new or not that familiar with the elements of the research paper. And of course, one last source relating to plagiarism, and this is more of approach using quotes and summary and paraphrasing correctly. All right, so good skills to have, good skills to practice, but challenging, I know. So that brings us to the end of my content slides. And I want to encourage us now to just have a discussion about what kind of issues you're working with or encountering in your writing. I mean, any question is applicable as long as it relates to the writing process. So, Yusnita, are you're going to facilitate the Q&A?
Yeah. Oh, yay.
Thank
Thank you, Andrea, for the nice presentation as always. Round of applause for Andrea. Everyone, you can put up your emojis if you like. Thank you so much. That was a great concise presentation, Andrea. We might have the main idea of our discussion today. However, of course, we have a few questions that have popped up in the chat box. So we might be able to start from there. Other participants, if you are keen, you can also raise your hands and ask your question in the Zoom room. We have the first question from Ibu Lydia Amalia, Andrea. She said that from her experience, there are a few journals that use literature reviews and some other use research overviews. So one journal using the terminology literature reviews, other journals would use the term research overviews. What are the key differences between these two?
You know, I don't have direct experience with the research overview category. Do you, Yusnita? Have you had experience with that?
I think I have a little experience with this because in my dissertation itself, I don't have literature review, but I have the theoretical framework. Some research can be related with previous research because it has been discussed a lot in journals, in previous researches. So let's say a lot of researchers have done research on the same topic, different contexts over and over during the course of, let's say, 10, 20 years. But then some other research can be quite new. There's a lot of novelty in one research, so that there might not be a lot of previous research that can be used as reference. It means that what we have to build in our review is how we can derive the framework, the overview, or the methodology that we are using in our research from the previous research that only focuses on the methodological development. There was no direct application of a certain theory in a topic. I hope I can be understood. So in this case, journals or academic writing, such as in thesis or in dissertation, allows, instead of having literature review, we can have research overviews. We can have theoretical framework. Other people might also call it theoretical overviews, so that we can still justify our way of thinking, how we are leading our readers to understand the methodology that we use in our research. Begitu, Ibu Lydia Amalia. Jadi kalau sudah ada penelitian sebelumnya yang sudah cukup banyak dan bisa dijadikan referensi, maka muncullah apa yang disebut dengan literature review. Tetapi ada penelitian yang betul-betul banyak novelty-nya, katakanlah baru sekali, sehingga metodologinya memang harus diadaptasi dari theoretical framework yang ada. Maka itu kita sebut dengan research overviews atau theoretical framework. I hope it answers your question, Ibu Lydia.
No, that's good for me because I haven't actually worked with the term research overview. It's always been lit review. Yeah.
Yes, that's the common ones. Ibu Lydia, we hope that answers you. Thank you. And then we have a second question here from Ratih Novitasari. Ms. Garner, thank you for sharing the information about how to compose an article. I have a question for you. Do you use or do you have moves in composing the literature review part?
Do I have, what was the question, the specific question?
her question is, do you have or do you use moves in composing the literature review part?
Yes, definitely. Good question. And I like to talk.
Yeah.
I like to talk about moves for each section, actually, right? And so in the client checklist, I believe I'd have to go back and maybe one of the team members can check if we put the moves into the client checklist. And anybody have that handy? Well, I can look while we're
client checklist.
Yeah, look at the client checklist under lit review and see if we've included our moves there. Because I think it's a good point, and I think it's would be useful for others to but while we're looking for that, so basically in our lit review, the overall move is moving from the broad topic, the broad, somewhat broad topic within your own subject into a much more narrow perspective. And we always present that as the upside down triangle, right? And and then each paragraph of the lit review becomes more more concise, not concise, but more specific to your topic. So there's a nice flow from general to narrow. And did you find the moves, Yusnita? Are they in there?
I have found the client checklist. Would you mind sharing the? Let me share the screen.
Okay.
I don't think we have included the moves.
Okay. I have them somewhere else. I don't have them handy to right now, but I know because we went through them in training as well. Remember? And
we did.
Yeah. But and then as we're moving through from that broad to the narrow, we are also presenting the arguments also broad to narrow. So the arguments mean the research that's been done is, if it's sort of more broad, it's in the earlier part of the lit review. If it's more specific and tied more directly to my study, it's towards the end of my lit review, because I'm going to, my final 2 moves in the lit review will be my research gap, which should clearly fall out of my argument above, right, that I've done, and then link my research questions to my gap. So those are the overall moves. I might have forgotten one, but those are the general moves, and I will look for that information while we're talking.
Yeah.
Thanks for the question.
Thank you for the question. Our writing center team, I have a question. Are we going to share the research client checklist to our participants today?
In fact, we actually already shared the article client checklist when we sent the emails to the participants alongside with the Zoom link. Yes.
Checklist. Yes. Thank you so much. That's very generous of you, team. What we can do actually, Ibu Ratih Novita, your question is very good about the move in composing the literature review, and I believe that is a little bit theoretical because we understand you might have experience of reading Swales 1994 about the moves in academic writing, so I would assume that you might be familiar with that.
Yeah.
In the writing center, we are trying to cover for a diverse range of clients, including the undergrad students, the postgrad students, and in all honesty, undergrad students might not be familiar with Swales' academic writing moves. So we have created a research client checklist so that we can give some step-by-step writing and elements in the literature review. That will be easier to follow for our fellow clients in the undergrad level. Thank you so much, Ibu Rati. If you are keen on further discussion, we welcome you to discuss with us by registering at our Writing Center consulting sessions. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Bu Yusnita, for the offer and then for the information. And also thank you for you, Miss Garner, for the explanations. Thank you.
Of course, of
Very
course.
much welcome. Thank you, Ibu. All right, we can move on into the next question from Dara Cendikia. Is that qualitative literature review just to support the research? I think Dara is asking whether literature review should be qualitative or does it function to support our research?
Okay. Can you clarify? I'm sorry for me.
Yeah. The question written in the chat box is pretty straightforward. So the literal text in the chat box is saying, is that qualitative literature review to just support research? So maybe we can invite Bapak or Ibu Dara to tell us, to clarify the question. Bapak Dara, are you in the room?
Halo.
Ibu Dara, silakan Ibu, please confirm your question.
Maksud saya itu apakah literatur review yang ini ya, kan ada yang kuantitatif pakai Prisma seperti itu, ataukah ini itu kan fungsinya untuk mencari landasan untuk riset yang akan digunakan seperti itu. Apakah saat membuat literatur review untuk landasannya itu, apakah juga perlu ada riset question dan hal-hal lain seperti itu, metodologi, kan biasanya literatur review selalu ada seperti itu.
Okay, baik. So Ibu Dara's question is that she wants to confirm, since research might have different approaches leading into the methodology, is it necessary or is it a must for us to include information whether it's going to be qualitative research or quantitative research? Do we need to include a little bit, a hint maybe about the methodology in the literature review section?
I think so. I think it's best. It helps tie all of the sections together. It can just be briefly mentioned, or it can be implied based on the studies that you're citing, right? If you're citing primarily qualitative studies rather than quantitative studies, it would be logical that your research method is similar. It would be qualitative. That's what I would expect if I was reading the paper. So I'd be a little surprised if the author proposed a quantitative study when all the literature that was cited was qualitative study. If it's clear, you know, that those were qualitative studies. So I think yes, there has to be kind of a cohesiveness or logic. I mean, perhaps your gap is to try to do something more novel and address it in a non-traditional method, so to speak. As long as there's justification for that, I think that's appropriate. But I think a hint in the lit review is useful.
Thank you so much, Andrea. Jadi Ibu Dara barusan Bu Andrea menjelaskan bahwa ada pentingnya atau ada perlunya kita sebutkan tentang dasar approach yang akan kita gunakan dalam seluruh penelitian kita. Kita sebutkan sedikit tentang apakah kita akan melaksanakan penelitian kita secara kuantitatif maupun kualitatif, harus ada hintnya. Secara teknik penulisan ini akan menjadi satu kohesi khusus, jadi nanti akan nyambung dengan bagian metodologi, di mana kita akan menjelaskan lebih banyak tentang approach yang kita gunakan, apakah penelitian kita kuantitatif maupun kualitatif, beserta instrumen dan segala data analisis proses yang akan kita gunakan begitu. Sehingga literature review itu kan tugasnya selain justifying our research itu juga leading atau membimbing pembaca kita untuk bisa kemudian memahami bagian berikutnya, yaitu bagian metodologi. Jadi kalau kita sebutkan sedikit mengenai approach yang akan kita gunakan, itu akan bermanfaat bagi pembaca.
Oke, terima kasih.
Translated your information. I hope I'm giving the correct information. Ibu Dara, terima kasih banyak atas pertanyaannya.
Ya, berarti itu untuk kalau untuk riset yang akan kita buat di proposalnya kan jelas ya, pasti metodologinya dijelaskan. Berarti untuk membuat landasan itu kita juga untuk yang lebih berkualitas itu berarti yang kuantitatif seperti itu atau bagaimana? Atau
penelitian
yang
itu kan
literatur review-nya?
Ya, baik. Jadi penelitian itu kan boleh kuantitatif, boleh kuantitatif, boleh kualitatif. Dua-duanya sama kuatnya karena memiliki dasar teori dan dasar metodologi yang kita bisa support, kita bisa justify begitu Ibu. Jadi tentu tidak ada batasan bahwa misalnya kualitatif lebih bagus daripada kuantitatif, kan tidak begitu. Jadi kalau keseluruhan research ini kita kuantitatif, di literature review-nya kita sebutkan sedikit, ini nanti penelitianku bakal kuantitatif begitu. Atau kalau memang kita seluruh approach-nya mau menggunakan yang kualitatif, maka di literature review kita sebutkan sedikit bahwa nanti metodologi yang akan digunakan adalah kualitatif untuk tujuan ini. Jangan lupa bahwa beberapa penelitian yang terbaru bisa juga menggunakan mixed method. Jadi kedua-duanya bisa ada. Jadi nanti kita mungkin, ya Ibu bagaimana?
Maksud saya apakah yang disebutkan itu di literatur review-nya, di metodologi literatur review-nya?
Ya, disebutkan sedikit saja karena nanti penjelasan yang lebih banyak kan di metodologi sendiri Ibu, di section methodology.
Oh, jadi akan lebih bagus literatur review-nya itu juga ada research question begitu ya?
Ibu sedang mempersiapkan jurnal untuk artikel atau tesis
untuk
atau
proposal.
Proposal disertasi atau proposal tesis?
Iya, disertasi.
Baik, Ibu. Kalau untuk proposal disertasi sementara ini bentuknya kan chapter 1 introduction, chapter 2 literature review, chapter 3 adalah keseluruhan tentang metodologi begitu ya. Jadi di bagian literature review mungkin penjelasan tentang metodologinya tidak sebanyak nanti apa yang akan kita sebutkan di chapter 3 begitu. Jadi boleh bicara banyak-banyak untuk metodologi di bagian chapter 3 Ibu. Research question itu justru biasanya berada di chapter 1 kalau tidak salah.
Oke, terima kasih.
Sama-sama Ibu. If you need a more extensive discussion about how to structure your proposal for dissertation, Ibu Dara will welcome you to register for a consultation at our writing center. Right. Team, please put the link for the registration in the chat box. I hope it can be useful for our participants. Thank you so much, Ibu Dara, and your extensive question. I hope that the explanation and discussion just now can be useful for all of our participants in the Zoom room as well. All right. Now we have another question, Andrea. We have a question from Deva Krishna. Dear Mrs. Garner, do you recommend 1 or 2 figures or flowchart to sum up the main point of academic journal and put it in the middle of the paper? Is it beneficial for improving the value of our paper?
Okay. I am a big believer in using visuals to supplement and to help share the findings and results of our work. I think it's very important, and it also breaks up the text, and it also makes it easy to maybe understand the context of the participants or the overall flow of your findings, because it's very hard to follow sometimes in the text. So charts and tables and so forth, if needed, I mean, they should only be used as necessary, not as filler, right? I mean, they need to have a purpose. So I do believe, yes, that visuals do improve the value of a paper. As far as it being a figure, to sum up the main point, not necessarily. I think that the visuals are specific to a particular type of data that you're trying to convey, or a piece of information that you're sharing that it's easier to digest visually, rather than I mean, there probably are exceptions when a flow chart might be beneficial if it's a very if it's a very complicated research, or lots of layers, a flow chart might be appropriate. So it's all about, does it fit the context of your paper, and does it add value? Yes.
Thank you so much for your explanation, Andrea. So, Ibu Deva, a visual will help the presentation of your literature review. In journal articles, we might not have it very often, but then in a thesis or in a dissertation, visuals like flow charts or table or diagram or pie charts, it will help a lot to understand, especially if you have some sort of bibliometric analysis, if you have to see the number of publication in certain number of years, for example, it will be very helpful. I hope it answers your question, Ibu Deva. Okay. Next one, we have another question from Dari. So this is a very basic question, and I think this is everyone's challenge. How to read previous studies effectively to write a literature review?
There are various strategies, and so I want to approach this two ways, kind of like actually reading through a particular article, but also sort of tracking what you've read and pulling the information together, right? Because we can read 20 articles, but then what do we do with that information? So as far as my approach to reading an article, and I do have a good resource I'm going to recommend to help, but is my first, when I first pick it up or I click on a PDF or whatnot, is a scan. Okay, always scan first. Don't start reading. It's just like we teach, if you're a teacher, right? You like make sure that you look over the material before you start reading. Look at the title, right? Look at the abstract. Look at the keywords. All right. Sometimes I go to keywords first before abstract, because I'm not going to read the abstract if the keywords aren't a good match for what I'm looking for. All right. So that's step one, is that quick skim. If my article radar passes that test, then I'm going to potentially jump to the conclusion. All right. And I like to go to the conclusion because I want to see really what's the overall significance of this article, and does it align with where I'm headed? Therefore, it justifies that I should spend more time with this article. I also like to determine the methodology if I haven't, if it's usually obviously in the abstract, but if I'm able to spend more time in the methodology, and the articles that are very aligned with my my chosen topic, I'm going to read the more in depth. I'm going to actually spend some time with the article and sift through all the sections to become more informed. But I'm very choosy about which articles I'm going to read from start to finish. Because most of the time, we're looking at certain pieces of the article. But as we find information, and we've done this with our articles, I suggest that there's various tools for synthesis of literature review and their charts, their tables, or whatnot, but to find a tool that works best for you, because you want to only read it once, right? And you want to find the key information. So these charts allow you to fill in, like, what's the key argument or the key claims, what is the methodology, just kind of a quick table. And then it's easier to compare articles for compare and contrast. It's easier to group articles that are alike, right, as you're going to prepare your lit review. So this table, it takes time, but it takes more time to go back and search for an article that you know you read, but you just can't remember all the details. So, and the source I want to recommend is, there's a website called Grad Coach, capital GRAD Coach, and I think it's all in coaches in I think lowercase, I believe. And well, it's capital GRAD and then coach in lowercase. Yeah, I have one of their sources, I believe, on identifying a topic. You'll see it in the slides, and it's just one, Grad Coach, not plural. And so we can do a quick search for that. But they specifically have a quick short video on making effective use of your time in reviewing articles, and it's not a heavy it's not heavy material. It's light, it's informative, it's fun. So I'd spend some time with that particular resource. Sorry for the long answer.
We enjoyed the detailed explanation, Andrea. Thank you so much. So there's a lot of ways of how we can manage the information that we get from our readings. Participants, if you have personal experiences of managing the information from your literature review, you can also raise your hand and share with us. Mungkin ada yang berpengalaman mengatur data dari referensi yang sedemikian banyak. Biasanya cara mengaturnya bagaimana kira-kira? Mungkin ada Bapak Ibu yang berkenan berbagi. Or also there is this approach, Andrea, you might be familiar with this as well. We call it a systematic review. So people would create their own system depending on the purpose of their research. They might be highlighting the methodology because they are pursuing the information about how to adapt a methodology into a new one, for example. So people would focus on that in the systematic review. And some other people might have a purpose of doing diachronic research or sort of historical research. So they would arrange references that they read are based on the times. So they would put the information in chronological order to understand a development or improvement of a topic of a research, for example. From there, usually they would be able to make some sort of synthesis or a summary to be included in their literature review. And of course, with today's technology, we can do all of this either manually or with the help of some digital software such as NVivo. It can help us to arrange the very much information from diverse ranges of topics in articles, journal articles, from books and everything, that we can put it together in one system.
No, that's great. It's great to point out the overall purpose of the research, right? Because the method or the approach might differ based on the overall purpose. So thanks for reminding me.
Thank you so much. And maybe for the undergrads, the number of the references that they read might not be as much as what they read for thesis or a dissertation. So the steps of the management might be different. We thank Andrea for giving us the basic idea on how we can manage all of our references and what we need to find from our references. That's very important.
Yeah, and it can be done as software and or an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah.
I do that commonly. At least I'll start that way, and it just whatever way you're comfortable with tracking your data.
Exactly. For example, in my study, I'm not very comfortable with any digital tools. What I do is to put A3 papers. I have a stack of A3 papers and make scribbles, make very messy mind maps, and then try to categorize this and that into big messy notes. And well, I was comfortable doing my literature review like that, even though that's probably not the best advice. However, people might be interested in doing this and that. It's very nice to see everything spread in one A3 paper with different colors or what.
I think it's really the message is what works for you as a writer, and what motivates you too. Like if an Excel spreadsheet just sounds horrible to someone and they're much more visual or much more creative, then of course go mind map or draw pictures or something, right? And yeah. All right.
Let's see if we have any more questions. I think we have a couple of interests for further consultation, Andrea. So the Writing Center team needs to get ready to consult our prospective clients from the seminar today. Okay, we have one good share from Ibu Inayatul Fariha that she said she uses mind map and metrics to manage her references, which is great. And Ibu Fidelia, would you please put your link for the how to synthesize or how to paraphrase into the chat box for everyone? That will be very interesting, because somebody, Ibu Dara, is asking if there is any software or any online resources to do synthesizing. From the Writing Center, everyone, we suggest, of course, ideally, we do synthesizing and paraphrasing manually by ourselves as the writer, it will be a good practice for us. However, if you are keen on trying some online software, Ibu Fidelia is giving you one example of the resource that you might be able to use. This is the information about how to synthesize, not necessarily software to do the synthesizing for you. So again, ideally, we do all of this as a writer. We need to learn to write. That's what we promote here at the Writing Center.
And
All
I
right.
could just,
Yes, Andrea?
I could just add a couple words about the paraphrasing software. As this question comes up from time to time, and I am not a fan of the paraphrasing software that's available currently. I know it's being improved, so my opinion could change, but generally I find that the results are substandard and they can actually add confusion to your paper. And they may or may not pass a plagiarism test. So be careful was what I'm saying. If your academic English is at a very high level and you can quickly identify an automated paraphrase that's not at the level it should be, then of course you can adjust that. But sometimes if we're younger or novice writers or new to academic writing, it's hard to spot a poor automated paraphrase. And so that's why I caution people to be careful. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much. So everyone, we have got a lot. We still have a couple of minutes. If you have any questions, you can raise your hand and shout out your question to us. Once again, if you are keen on having a one-on-one consultation with us, I would appreciate your registering with us through the link that we have provided in the chat box. At this point, most of the time our clients come to us with their English academic writing drafts. However, we are beginning to accept clients with academic writing drafted in Indonesian as well. So if one or two of you is having proposal drafts or article drafts in Indonesian, we are going to try our best to help you as well. Even though this is not officially launched yet, we will find a way to help you. Right. It seems that we have no more questions, Andrea. However, we have a final comment from Ibu Inayatul Fariha. Ibu Inayatul Fariha is a faculty member of the English department who is currently doing her doctoral study at Universitas Gadjah Mada, majoring in the literature, English literature. She said that, in her opinion, any software would not help in synthesizing information. We can use software to help us classify topics or classify keywords. For example, we can use a software called akan. However, the synthesizing can be done or should be done by ourselves. I think that's a good idea. We can make a mutual collaboration with softwares. They do the automatic classification. We can do the synthesizing of the information. And I think,
I just want to say that I fully agree with that, that the software that I think we're referring to, I think, and should be the classification, the tedious part of tracking the details. but the writer needs to determine what to synthesize, right? And how to synthesize. So yeah.
Thank you so much. That is very important information. Often in long-term studies like master's or doctoral studies, we are dealing with big number of references, and it is often tedious. Classification or the sorting out of the keywords can be helped by the software, but the interpretation, maybe it needs our touch, because I think humans are still the best in making interpretation in comparison to the artificial intelligence. So everyone, I think that wraps up our seminar this morning. We have a lot to discuss this morning. Thank you so much. If you are undergraduate students or postgrad students in master's and doctoral level, and if you think that you can benefit from our service here at the Academic Writing Center, Ibu Fidelia has just generously shared the registration link again with us. So please register with us, and we will have one-on-one consultation with you as our clients. Thank you so much for your participation today. Thank you so much, Andrea. Thank you so much, Writing Center team. We will see you again at the next workshop. As a matter of fact, Ibu Luki might have an announcement for the upcoming workshop, maybe, Ibu?
Sure. Just a second, please. So we are going to have a workshop.
Yes.
With the title of writing lead review. Yeah. Wait a second. I'm going to share my. Is it okay if I share the poster here?
Yes, please.
Okay. Here it is. Okay, let me share my screen, everyone. So on Wednesday next week, on the 16th of February, we are going to do the workshop session. We're going to hold a workshop session with the title of writing your literature review. So here we are going to focus on how to write the literature review, and the moves in writing literature review will be covered in the workshop, and it is free for the undergraduate students of UM and Universitas Brawijaya as well, because this is a collaboration workshop between the University of Brawijaya and Universitas Negeri Malang, with Andrea Mason-Garner as our consultant. Thank you.
So yes, we would be glad to have you. So this morning's presentation was more like a seminar. We're not actually diving into our individual writing, right? But in the workshop next week, there is an opportunity to actually dive into examples and perhaps your own lit review, that type of thing. So you spend more time in breakout rooms and less time listening to me.
Yeah, more
Once
practice.
again, thank you so much, everybody. We will see you again in our seminar and workshop series at the Writing Center. Have a good day today. Enjoy your weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Andrea.
Thanks, everyone.
Of course. See you soon.
Bye.
Halo, Fidel.